Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Sri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Narayana Iti Namine Prema Bhakti Rasanandam Kripa Sindhu Mamananam Pragyapayantam Vande Sri Bhakti Vedanta Narayanam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Kshiptascha Kamadhitaranga Madhye Kripamai Tvam Charanam Prapanya Vrinde Numaste Charanaravindam. So we're continuing with verse 19. This verse is a little bit more involved, so I think we'll just be able to cover the one verse today. Let's see how it goes. Tattvani purvarudhani karanani parasparam samavaya prayogachcha vibinnani pratak pratak chichaktya sajjamanotta bhagavan adi purushaha yojayanmayaya devo yoga nidrama kalpayat. Before the creation of the five gross elements, the fundamental elements existed in their natural condition in separate individual forms because the process of combining them had not been applied. The primeval personality, Bhagavan Mahavishnu, acted through the illusory potency by associating with his own transcendental potency. Uniting those separate elements by systematic combination, he created the material world. After accomplishing the task of creation in this way, he became absorbed in mystic slumber, the form of union with his own transcendental potency. So there's a lot going on here, and we'll be going through this in the commentaries. Tika translation from Srila Jiva Goswami Pad. The method of creation by Karanavdakshayi Vishnu has been described in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So if you remember, this is in the teachings of Devahuti Putra Kapiladev, Bhagavan Kapiladev, who describes Sankhya philosophy, beginning with the primary creation. In order to describe the act of creation as the awakening of the universal form, who is the embodiment of the aggregate of countless living entities, it is being explained more elaborately here. So it's a very important thing to understand because we hear sometimes about the universal form or Virat Rupa, right? And sometimes we wonder, well, why is the Purusha being described as the mountains are the stacks of his bones and all of the rivers and oceans are in his abdomen and so forth? It's because the Purush, the Virat Purush, or the universal form, has to exist in order for the living entities who want to try to enjoy the facilities of this world can do things, right? So, sa aikshata, he saw. This is a statement from the Vedas. The the Purush, first does seeing, and this brings into existence the ability to see for the embodied living entities. But we'll go through this and, hopefully this will make more sense. The primeval personality, Bhagavan Karanodakashayi, also called Mahavishnu, accomplished the creation of the universe by amalgamating the previously unmixed five gross elements through the influence of his own spiritual potency reflected in the form of the illusory energy. So that's a very dense sentence. Let's unpack that a little bit. So the previously unmixed five gross elements, this is earth, water, fire, air, space. But previously they were all in this aggregate, right? The pradhan state. And then they became separated. And how did he do it? He did it through his own spiritual potency, who was reflected as the Chaya Shakti, or external energy. So the external energy is Bhagavan's own potency, but who is reflected, the reflection. Why is she called the reflection? Because the external energy can create illusion or maya, that which is not. It is the semblance of things being permanent when they're not. So, okay. So it's the shadow of the spiritual potency is called the illusory energy, Maya Shakti, who is represented, whose Adhishtatri Devata is Durga Devi, who is Bhagavan's own Shakti. Then the Supreme Person, who is inclined to perform pastimes, not being ambitious to carry out the duty of creation, became engrossed in mystic slumber with his transcendental potency, Ramadevi. So you remember there was a question, what exactly is Mahavishnu doing with Ramadevi? He is in mystic slumber, and in his mystic slumber, which we don't have a perspective on or view, but he is consorting with Ramadevi in his mystic slumber. Because how much does Mahavishnu have to work? This is said, Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate natat samaschabhyatikashta drishyate. This is the statement from the Upanishads. He has no work to perform. So he doesn't have to do anything. He is just kicking back and he is allowing svabhaviki jnana bala kriyacha. His potencies can act independently. They have all knowledge and they have all power, ability. In other words, his potencies can do everything. So God does not have to actually lift a finger, literally. And this is what Mahavishnu is doing. He is basically kicking off the creation and he is in his mystic slumber. So we think of sleep as an unconscious state where we are in tamogun. This is a yoga nidra, and in his yoga nidra, he is consorting with Ramadevi, his own internal potency. एतान्यसंहत्य यदा महदादीनि सप्तवै कालकर्मगुणोपेतो जगदादि रूपाविशत्. This is from the third canto. This is from the teachings of Lord Kapiladev. The cause of the universe, Bhagavan, being endowed with time, activity, and the modes of material nature, entered this universe when the seven essential realities, that is, the whole aggregate material energy, false ego, and the five gross elements were in their unmixed state. So, basically, these are the essential things. It's the Kala Shakti, the time factor, that's essential. The time factor does not exist in the spiritual realm. Now, this is a little bit of a hard concept, but think about it. We are on this river. Time is flowing like a river. We don't get to go back. We don't get any do-overs. There is no ability to travel back in time, although in our next birth, we can take birth which is in a time closer to the appearance of Mahaprabhu. As we become purified by our practice of sadhana, we can take birth in a time which is closer to the time when Param Gurudev was present, when Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was present, when Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was present, when Srila Rupa Goswami Pad was present, when Mahaprabhu was present. But this is time travel kind of just going back in phase, not literally going against the current of time. Time rules everything and time cuts everything short. And that's the rule of this world. But in the spiritual world, there's only the present. There is only the present time, which is full of ras and loving exchanges. We are not really concerned with Vaikuntha Dham, although in Vaikuntha, Nachakala Vikramaha. This is also described in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in the description of the four Kumaras entering Vaikuntha. So, going back in time by phase simply means, let's say you are doing sadhana, right? And you are carefully following instructions of your Gurudev and following in the Anugatya, right? In your next birth, where you will take birth will be a place in Gora Lila, going closer to the time of Mahaprabhu's appearance. So, like the phase is this: Mahaprabhu appeared in this Dhanya Kali Yuga over 500 years ago. Now, in our next birth, we can go to a place where Mahaprabhu's appearance is more recent and the advancement of Kali Yuga is less egregious and less, the advancement of Kali is less. So that is, in one sense, going back in time. So think of what it was like if you were born in a village in Navadvip Mandala, in Navadvip Dham, and you came and joined the mutt as a young brahmachari, and you remained a young Bal brahmachari your entire life, and you were hearing from Mahajans like your Param Gurudev, my Param Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and you had very good memory and you could hear everything, you could address, speak and recite everything and never got entangled in family life. That's what I mean by going back in time. Going further back in time, we come closer to the time of Mahaprabhu. And then, you will hear directly Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivas Prabhu, Shyamananda Prabhu, to have association of these devotees. So this is what is meant by going back in time, by phase. All right, so back to the commentary. So thereby all the substances became agitated and mixed together. Then from this mixture was born an unconscious egg from which the universal form was manifested. This egg-like object is enclosed by Pradhan, or the seed principle of creation, and Prakriti, material nature, and covered in layers of the elements beginning with water, each layer being 10 times greater than the previous one. So this egg-like description is the Brahmanda. We describe this universe as the Brahmanda. Anda literally means egg, right? So that's what's being described here. This is the egg-like form of the universe. Now, our universe is surrounded by 7 layers, beginning with water. And each layer is then 10 times greater than the previous one. These layers are described in various places, such as when Krishna and Arjun went to retrieve the sons of Sandipani Muni, he actually went to visit Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha, and they crossed these boundaries of the material universe. Anyone other than Krishna and Arjun can do this? No. um, Thus, the supreme divinity who was resting in the water within the embryonic universe arose and, giving up his neutrality, he began to manifest many kinds of variegatedness within the universal egg. Thus, the mouth, the voice, and fire were manifest from that egg, and the nose, the life air, and the sense of smell emerged in the same way. This is getting back to the topic of Sankhya philosophy. Okay, so Sankhya philosophy describes that first there was the voice ability, and the voice ability is associated with the fire element. And this is also associated with the mouth of the universal form. Similarly, the nose, the life air, and the sense of smell also emerged in the same way. Then the two eyes emerged along with Surya, the presiding deity of the eyes. The ear also emerged, and from the ear, the sense of hearing was manifest. So this is all describing the emergence of these elements and the associated, the word um, is the uh, the sense objects exist in a subtle form, and these come from the universal form. Okay. So the ear, and then the skin, pores, tears, genitals, legs, hands, feet, and other bodily parts were manifest. So again, if you go back and read the descriptions of Sankhya and creation in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 26, then this may help to put it in a little better context, but it's a very long description, and I won't go into detail here. Um, there's also the footnote saying that according to Srimad Bhagavatam, the coverings begin with earth. But here, the causal ocean itself is counted as the first covering. All the demigods, being the presiding deities of the senses, entered into that gigantic form, but the universal form did not wake up. When, despite the presence of faculties such as mind, intelligence, and ego, the universal form still did not awaken, the supersoul, who is the presiding deity of consciousness, finally entered the heart from the consciousness. So this description of the universal form is describing the aggregate of the living beings in this material world as manifested by Bhagavan. It's a little difficult to get our heads around, but think of it this way. It is describing how the original person manifests a Purusha presence that enables us to try to play the role of Purusha in this material world. So at that time, when the supersoul entered the heart, the universal form arose within the water. Therefore, no one is capable of awakening the universal form as he lies submerged beneath the waters, except for the Kshetragya Purusha, the personality who is the knower of all fields and who is the presiding deity of the life, air, senses, mind, intelligence, and consciousness. In this way, after combining all the essential realities, Bhagavan woke up the universal form for the purpose of creation. Therefore, since he is indifferent and free from ambition, after engaging in all these activities, he accepted the state of mystic slumber. So I know this is a little difficult to understand. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur will also explain it now. So let's just try to hear this and understand it. Tatparya of Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur. In Bhagavad Gita 9:10, it is stated, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. The purport is that before the creation, Maya Devi, the shadow of the transcendental potency, was inactive, and the substances of her ingredient aspect also existed separately in a state of non-amalgamation. In other words, the substances were not fully collected together. They were existing in a kind of unmanifest state. By the desire of Krishna, that is, by the influence of Mahavishnu, when the instrumental and ingredient aspects of Maya were combined, an effect emerged in the form of the cosmic manifestation. Now, remember, we've talked about instrumental and ingredient aspects. The instrumental cause or the instrumental cause and ingredient cause. So these are the various hetus. right? Um, when this was accomplished, Bhagavan again became engrossed in his transcendental potency of mystic slumber. The word yogamaya, pastime potency, or yoga nidra, mystic slumber, should be understood to mean the natural or inherent illumination of the transcendental potency. However, its shadow, the illusory potency, is by nature inert and full of darkness. This is quoting from Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta Kshetra Gyakya Tata Para Avidya Karma Samgyanya Tritiya Shaktir Ishyate. That the third potency, Vishnu Shakti, there is the Para potency, para prakriti, the superior energy. And then there is the kshetragya shakti, that is also superior. That is the living entities. They are superior energy, but they are minute, so they can be overwhelmed. And then there is a third energy, which is capable of, it has full of darkness, and it binds the living entities to fruitive activities in this world. And that is being referred to here. When Krishna wants to make some illumination in the object composed of insentient inertia, he combines, or does yoga, the influence of his own transcendental potency with the inactive shadow potency, or maya, thereby accomplishing the aforementioned task of cosmic creation. This is called yogamaya, in which there are two types of experience, namely the Vaikuntha experience and the insentient material experience. Sri Krishna, his plenary portions, and the pure living entities who are his separated expansions realize the Vaikuntha experience, whereas the bound living entities realize the insentient material experience. Now, this gets back to the whole discussion on the origin of the jiva. The jivas originate in the forehead of Mahavishnu, and they either turn towards the spiritual sky and come under the shelter of the superior energy, or they turn towards the material world and they become absorbed in material nature under the identity of Ahankar. The covering of spiritual realization in the experience of the conditioned souls has been called Yoga Nidra. This is also the influence of Bhagavan's potency. There will be a more elaborate analysis of this principle later in the text. So we're not trying to try to go into detail on that and how the term Yoga Nidra is also used for the covering of spiritual realization. But this verse is basically describing the entire primary process of creation, and it is referencing this entire chapter in Srimad Bhagavatam where the primary creation takes place. So there's two kinds of creation, sarga and visarga. Sarga is the primary creation, which is being described here, and visarga is the secondary creation, where Brahmaji then gives rise to the rishis and to the Prajapatis, and all of the various types of beings are created within this world. So this is a lot. It is very dense. And next week we'll continue with verse 20. Any questions? I know it's kind of a very dense and philosophical topic. Um, But it's important to understand this. It is good to understand this and basically how the world was created, because we're very deeply entangled, and being freed from material entanglement, of course, it is not our goal, but we are automatically freed if we take to the path of pure bhakti. All right. Well, if there is no other question, I think this is a good place to stop, and we'll continue next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranams. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dhanavad.
Hare Krishna.